A broke 17-year-old from a tiny town in Germany moved to America with nothing. No money, no connections, no plan. And over the next 30 years, he convinced some of the most powerful people in the country that he was a British aristocrat, a Hollywood producer, a Wall Street bond broker, a NASA scientist, and finally, a member of the most famous family in American history, the Rockefellers. And hiding behind all of those fake lives was a murder he had been running from for decades. Let me tell you about Clark Rockefeller, or as his birth certificate says, Christian Karl Gerhardsreiter. Christian grew up in a tiny town called Siegsdorf in Bavaria, Germany. His parents were a seamstress and a landscape painter. Completely ordinary. But Christian from the very beginning acted like he was better than everyone around him. Neighbors remembered him as a child who picked fights and looked down on people. He was obsessed with America, obsessed with wealth, obsessed with reinventing himself. At 17, he packed a bag and left Germany forever. He never went back. He arrived in the United States in 1978 on a tourist visa and immediately started becoming other people. First, he was Christopher Chichester, a British aristocrat and descendant of Lord Mountbatten. He handed out business cards that called him the 13th Baronet with a fake family crest. He talked his way into a wealthy suburb of Los Angeles called San Marino, got himself a public access TV show, audited classes at USC Film School, charmed his way into the home of an elderly widow named Didi Sohus, who rented him her guest house. And that is where things get very dark. Didi's son John and his wife Linda also lived on the property. In 1985, John and Linda Sohus disappeared, just vanished. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. And Christian Gerhardsreiter quietly packed his things and left town the same week. Nobody connected the dots, not yet. He moved to Connecticut and became Christopher Crowe, a television producer who had worked on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He got jobs at financial firms on Wall Street. He gave one firm a social security number that turned out to belong to serial killer David Berkowitz. He was fired. He moved on. He always moved on. Then in the early 1990s, he made his most audacious move yet. He walked into the wealthy social circles of New York City and announced that he was Clark Rockefeller, a member of that Rockefeller family. A lesser-known branch, he would say modestly, but absolutely a Rockefeller. And people believed him. He joined exclusive private clubs. He collected what he claimed was a priceless art collection. He wore silk scarves and spoke with the effortless confidence of someone who had never worried about money a single day in his life. He told people he worked helping third-world countries manage their international debt. Nobody questioned it. Nobody ever asked for proof, because why would a Rockefeller need to prove anything? In 1993, he met a young Harvard-educated McKinsey executive named Sandra Boss at a cocktail party. She fell in love with the most intelligent and interesting man she had ever met. They married in 1995, and for the next 12 years, Sandra worked her high-powered career while Clark stayed home, never worked a single day, spent her money, and built an elaborate false life around them both. He told her accountant he was her brother, so the accountant would keep filing her taxes as single. He refused to be photographed. He never let her meet his family. He carried a radio device that he claimed was connected to Rockefeller security offices because he was paranoid about being kidnapped. Every single thing about him was a lie, and for 12 years Sandra never suspected. But eventually the marriage fell apart. Sandra hired a private investigator, and what the PI found was exactly nothing, because Clark Rockefeller did not exist. There was no paper trail, no birth certificate, no family, no history. Just a man who had invented himself completely. She filed for divorce and moved to London with their 7-year-old daughter Ray, who Clark called Snooks. He was granted only a handful of supervised visits per year, and that was more than he could take. On July 27, 2008, during one of those supervised visits in Boston, Clark Rockefeller grabbed his daughter, shoved a social worker out of the way, threw Snooks into a waiting car, and disappeared. For 6 days, he was the most wanted man in America. Meanwhile, the kidnapping blew the lid off 30 years of lies. Calls flooded into the FBI from across the country. Former neighbors, former colleagues, former friends, all with different names for the same man. Christopher Chichester, Christopher Crowe, Chris Mountbatten, Chip Smith, Clark Rockefeller, and then investigators in Los Angeles quietly reopened a cold case. The disappearance of John and Linda Sohus, back in San Marino, back in 1985, back when Christian Gerhardsreiter had lived in their guest house. In 1994, 9 years after the disappearance, workers digging a pool in the backyard of Didi Sohus's old property hit something in the ground. Bones. Dismembered human remains packed into garbage bags. DNA confirmed it was John Sohus. Linda has never been found. The FBI tracked Clark Rockefeller to Baltimore, where he had already set up yet another identity as Chip Smith, a yacht captain. They got a tip that he was living there and decided to lure him out of his apartment. They called and told him his catamaran was sinking at the marina. He walked outside immediately. They arrested him on the spot. His daughter was inside, unharmed. When police fingerprinted him, the truth finally came out. Christian Karl Gerhardsreiter, German national, born 1961, Siegsdorf, Bavaria, 7 fake identities, 30 years, 1 murder. He was convicted of kidnapping his daughter in 2009. Then in 2013, a jury convicted him of the first-degree murder of John Sohus. He was sentenced to 27 years to life. He fired his own lawyers at sentencing and represented himself. He stood up and told the court he was innocent, that he did not do it. The jury did not believe him. For the first time in 30 years, nobody believed a word he said. Christian Gerhardsreiter grew up in a tiny German village desperate to be someone, and he spent his entire life becoming everyone else. Everyone except the one person he could never escape, himself. That is the case. Nova out. A woman fell in love online with a handsome cardiologist from her community. They talked every single day for 9 years. He proposed to her. She turned down other relationships for him. She planned her entire future around him. And then she discovered that Bobby did not exist. And the person behind all of it was someone who had been sitting at her family dinner table the entire time. Let me tell you about Kirat Assi and Sweet Bobby. Kirat was a 29-year-old radio presenter living in London, confident, successful, part of a close-knit Punjabi Sikh community. In 2009, she got a Facebook message from a teenage boy named JJ who was dating her younger cousin Simran. JJ wanted advice about the relationship. Kirat helped him out. Sweet enough. Then tragedy. A few weeks later, JJ died suddenly in Kenya. Allergic reaction. Kirat was sad but moved on. Then her cousin Simran gave her the contact information for JJ's older brother, a man named Bobby Jandu, so Kirat could send her condolences. And Bobby messaged her back. Bobby was charming, Bobby was intelligent, Bobby was a cardiologist, he was handsome in his photos, he was from her community, he knew people she knew, he attended events she had been to. Everything about him felt real and familiar and safe. They became friends, then close friends, then something more. But Bobby could never meet in person. There was always a reason, a medical emergency, a work crisis, a family situation. He was always just about to get on a plane when something came up, and Kirat would wait and he would come back, and the connection would be deeper than ever. By 2015, Bobby told her he loved her. They were in a relationship, officially, despite never having met face-to-face in nearly 6 years. And here is where it gets dark. Almost immediately after the relationship became romantic, Bobby's personality changed. He became controlling, he monitored who Kirat talked to, he told her how to dress, he dictated her social life, he caused her to pull away from friends and family, he manufactured crises constantly, a brain tumor, a stroke, a near-fatal shooting in Kenya, time and witness protection. Every time Kirat started questioning things, something dramatic would happen, and she would be pulled back in. This went on for 9 years. Kirat eventually hired a private investigator, and the PI traced Bobby to an address in Brighton. She drove there herself, knocked on the door, and a man answered who looked exactly like Bobby's photos. He had no idea who she was. His name was Bobby Jandu. He was a real person, a dental surgeon living in Brighton with his wife and 2 children. His identity had been stolen. He had never spoken to Kirat once in his entire life. Standing on that doorstep, Kirat's phone rang. It was Bobby, calling her while she stood in front of the real Bobby Jandu. She drove home in a complete state of shock, and she called the one person she trusted most to make sense of it all, her cousin Simran, and Simran told her to leave Brighton immediately. The next day, Simran came to Kirat's house, and she confessed. It was her. It had always been her. Simran Bogle had been 17 years old when she started the Catfish. A teenager, she had created not just one fake profile, but over 50 fake Facebook accounts. Bobby, Bobby's friends, Bobby's family, his colleagues, his patients, an entire fake world populated with fake people, all controlled by one person sitting in London who happened to be Kirat's own cousin. For 9 years, Simran had woken up every single morning and logged into dozens of fake accounts to maintain a fictional universe designed to trap one person. When Kirat asked her why, she just said she thought they were both in a dark place and that she thought the fantasy would bring them both some kind of joy. Kirat went to the police. And here is where the story goes from devastating to infuriating. The police told her that catfishing is not a crime in the United Kingdom. They could not arrest Simran. They could not charge her. The case was dropped due to lack of evidence. Simran Bogle has never faced a single criminal charge. Kirat had no choice but to sue her in civil court. She won a landmark settlement in 2020, believed to be the first successful civil claim for catfishing in UK history. Simran paid damages and provided a letter of apology. In 2021, Simran quietly resigned from her position as a vice president at Barclays Bank. When the Netflix documentary Sweet Bobby came out in 2024, Simran declined to be interviewed. She released a statement calling it a private family matter that had been resolved. 9 years, over 50 fake identities, a fake engagement, a fake life, and not one day in prison. And here is the thing that I keep coming back to. Simran sat at family gatherings with Kirat. She hugged her. She celebrated birthdays with her, all while logging into dozens of fake accounts every night to control her cousin's entire emotional world. That is not a catfish. That is psychological warfare, and the law had no name for it. Kirat Assi spent 9 years loving someone who never existed, and the person who stole those years from her is walking around free right now. That is the case. Nova out. Five Italian thieves spent 3 years secretly planning the greatest diamond heist in history. They cracked a vault protected by infrared heat sensors, Doppler radar, a magnetic field, seismic detectors, and a lock with 100 million possible combinations. They walked out with over $100 million worth of diamonds, gold, and jewels, and they almost got away with it perfectly, until one of them threw away his lunch. Let me tell you about the Antwerp diamond heist, the heist of the century. Antwerp, Belgium is the diamond capital of the world. Roughly 80% of the world's rough diamonds pass through this one city, and right in the heart of the Antwerp Diamond District sits the Diamond Center, a building so secure that the vault underneath it was considered completely impenetrable. 2 floors below street level. Protected by every piece of security technology that existed in the early 2000s. Infrared heat detectors, Doppler radar, seismic sensors, a magnetic field, and a combination lock with 100 million possible combinations. Nobody was getting into that vault, ever. And then Leonardo Notarbartolo showed up. Leonardo was a professional thief from Turin, Italy, part of a loose network of highly skilled criminals known as the School of Turin. These were not your average robbers. These were specialists, artists. Each one brought something specific to the table. In 2000, 3 full years before the heist, Leonardo rented an office inside the Diamond Center building. He posed as a diamond dealer. He wore nice suits. He shook hands with the real dealers. He attended events. He built relationships with the staff. He learned the rhythms of the building, when people arrived, when they left, when the security guards changed shifts, which doors locked from which side. For 3 years, he studied that building like a student studying for the most important exam of his life. Meanwhile, his crew was doing their homework too. They figured out the vault's infrared heat sensors could be fooled with a simple can of hairspray. Spray a fine mist over the sensor, and the temperature change tricks it into thinking nobody is there. The seismic sensor could be bypassed by moving slowly and carefully. They practiced, over and over, getting the timing perfect. On the night of February 15th, 2003, our Valentine's Day weekend, Leonardo and his crew made their move. They slipped into the building, they disabled the alarms, they got past the security systems using the hairspray trick and a dust mop handle taped with styrofoam to block a light sensor. And then they spent hours in that vault, methodically, carefully, opening 123 of the 160 safe deposit boxes. Loose diamonds, cut stones, gold bars, silver, jewelry. Everything went into bags. When they left, they took the surveillance tapes with them. They cleaned the vault. They left it looking almost untouched. The theft was not discovered until Monday morning, when a security guard finally noticed something was wrong. By then, Leonardo and his crew were already driving back to Italy, and here is where the most expensive lunch in history comes into the picture. On the drive back to Italy, the crew stopped and gathered up all their tools and garbage from the heist. They needed to dispose of everything that could link them to the crime, so they drove into a stretch of Belgian forest and dumped multiple bags of evidence. What they did not know was that this particular stretch of forest was regularly patrolled by a retired local man named August van Camp, who could not stand littering. He found the bags the very next morning and called the police. Inside those bags, police found tools used in the heist, receipts, loose gemstones that had fallen out of the haul, security video cassettes, and one half-eaten salami sandwich with Leonardo Notarbartolo's DNA all over it. A salami sandwich. That was it. That was the thing that cracked the greatest diamond heist in history. A man's lunch. Police traced everything back to Leonardo and arrested him 5 days after the heist when he casually walked back into the Diamond Center building. 4 members of the crew were eventually convicted. Leonardo got 10 years. The others got 5 each. But here's the twist that makes this story truly unforgettable. After his release, Leonardo gave a bombshell interview to Wired magazine, and he claimed that the whole heist had been a setup from the beginning. He said a diamond dealer had approached him and hired his crew specifically to rob the vault, and that the real plan was an insurance fraud scheme. The dealer had allegedly tipped off all the other merchants in the building to quietly remove their valuables before the heist. So when Leonardo's crew cracked open 123 safe deposit boxes, most of them were already empty. The crew thought they were stealing $100 million, but the insurance payout would go to the diamond dealer who set the whole thing up. Leonardo claims they were double-crossed, that they risked everything and the person who hired them walked away with the real money. Belgian police say his story does not hold up. The evidence found at the scene contradicts major parts of it, and the $100 million worth of diamonds stolen that night, they have never been recovered, not a single stone. Somewhere out there is a fortune in diamonds that simply vanished, and the only man who might know where they are is a retired Italian thief who got caught because he could not stop eating his salami sandwich on the drive home. That is the case. Nova out.